like what you did. He would be like, "All right, you know where Denver, Colorado is?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Is it close? Like, "Yeah, it's not close to
Yeah.
that. it's not close to that. It's
Not
nowhere
nowhere
near that.
near. Yeah.
Nowhere near it." Same thing with me in Virginia Beach, but we do get out there, right? So we're it's not where we would probably call our favorite place to go beach. There's some other areas on the East Coast where you can find, but um, I was reading about your stuff, man. It's exciting. I've been following you on Twitter or X now, is what we call it, and
Mm.
just watching all your things and your approach to it. So I'm excited to get started and learn from you today. I got about 40 minutes. I got somebody coming up behind you, so I'm booked up today. So does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Being booked up's a good problem to have, you know?
Yeah. It's man, I enjoy the conversation, right? I enjoy just meeting people like yourself, and when I saw your stuff come in and started following you, and you'll touch on it, tell your book and some of the mission that you're on that I think is absolutely cool, and your approach to how you're just kind of in your face with the whole setup, man. I think it's neat. There's no unknowns about the Paul Bauer mission.
No,
Um,
no, we are trying to get men laid. That's that's what we're doing. Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. So you just gave it all away, folks. And now you have every reason in the world to tune in to today's episode of the Second Chance Podcast, especially if you're a guy. Ladies, you might want to turn it up, or make sure you refer to the man in your life, and or whoever needs to hear this for you. But I'm thrilled to meet you and learn more about you. Paul Bauer, host of the Come On Man podcast, best-selling author and relationship coach, specializing in helping men rediscover their confidence, ignite passion, and take control of their romantic lives. After a 14-year marriage and a subsequent long-term relationship ended, Paul embarked on a powerful journey of self-awareness and transformation. Through his work, he's empowered men to break free from recurring patterns, build stronger connections, and lead relationships with confidence. Man, I'm excited. You got here. There's a story behind all this, man. Just your personal story, Paul. So you got a defining moment probably, and there's these aha moments. But walk us through. I'd love to hear about this path and how it started that got you going.
Yeah, I like to call it my Batman origin story, but
Oh,
yeah, like you said, I was married for 14 years, and when I was in high school, I grew up in rural Colorado, and I was always a little bit of a ladies' man. I was always pretty good with girls, but I was always the kind of guy that was like sniper dating mentality, where it was like one girl was nice to me, I'd go all in on the one girl, and then every girl I got into a relationship with, I'm like, I'm going to marry this girl. Did that ever since I was in high school. And what ended up happening is I left for the Navy when I was 18, and I met my now ex-wife when I was home on leave. I went home to Colorado. We were stationed or I was stationed in San Diego at the time.
all right.
And I came back to Colorado. I met her, and then just immediately fell in love, became Twitter pated, got into this long distance relationship with her for almost a year before I convinced her to move out to San Diego with me. And we were probably together in person about 3 months before we decided to elope, because I was getting ready to go out on a 3-month training exercise, be back for a month, and then be gone for a 6-month deployment. And so I wanted to make sure, I'm moving her away from her family. I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to be a provider. That's what a man does. A man provides. And so I made this executive decision at the tender age of 20. Actually, I was 19. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to marry you. So that way, one, we can get bachelor housing allowance that the Navy
Yeah.
gives you when you get married. And then I wanted to make sure that she had insurance, and she was covered that way. And then if anything happened to be overseas, she would get the the insurance money for it. So she was going to be well taken care of. And so we did that, and luckily, our marriage was okay for the first, I would say, 7 years, and we ended up having two beautiful children with that marriage. But the last half of that marriage was just absolute misery for me, Jeff. I I hated that woman, man. Like I was, I would work 17-hour days just to avoid coming home because I knew as soon as I came home, I would just get an earful, like she was just going to nag me to death. And there was times where I didn't even want to go and sleep in the same room as her. I would just go grab a cot out of my garage and go sleep in the office just because I just didn't want to be around her. But at the same time, I would have never quit that marriage, never once, because I had this paradigm that I made a vow. This is just how life is supposed to be. You get married, things are hot and heavy in the beginning, you have a couple of kids, and then you're just nagged to death for the rest of your life. And you're supposed to be miserable because that's how my dad and my mom are. My mom and dad they're coming up on their 50th wedding anniversary, absolutely miserable, right? But my dad is just this browbeaten workhorse of a guy who, just hates life and everything sucks. And my mom, she she's so bored to tears because he never takes her out and does anything. So she always gets into these social groups and volunteers everywhere because she needs a life purpose or whatever. And they can't stand each other. Like if I text my mom something, she doesn't tell my dad, so I have to text them both separately so that they're all on the same page because they don't talk to each other, but they will never, separate. And they're at the point where they're basically together despite each other.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are raised that this is normal. Like this is how life is supposed to be. And that's how I thought life was supposed to be. And thank God my now ex-wife had the courage to go and file for divorce when she did. I mean, that wasn't a fun experience, but in hindsight, it was actually kind of a blessing. But the thing is that when that relationship ended, man, I was like 50 pounds overweight. I didn't have any confidence. I've been out of practice dating for 15 years. I didn't know what I was doing. So that first year single again, I was just floundering on the dating circuit. I had no idea what I was doing. And then about 11 months after we separated, I met a girl that I lovingly refer to as Red Pill Chick on my podcast because one, I like to keep women anonymous, but two, she was the one that I look at as my real red pill experience. A lot of guys go through a divorce and they get what we call red pilled. They get zeroed out. They realize that whatever they ended up learning from that experience. And I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn a damn thing from my marriage. And I get rush into this relationship. I immediately go into this mode of acting like a husband that's been married for 15 years. I stop dating her. I get really comfortable. And this girl mentally checks out about 2 years into that relationship and starts sort of looking at her male orbiters, because all women have male orbiters around, and starts looking at her options. And about 2 more years after that, she ended up cheating on me and acting so bad. I didn't know about it until after the fact, but she was acting so bad and pushing me away that I was like, look, I can't be in a relationship like this. So I ended up breaking up with her. The good thing about that relationship, though, was that I lost all the weight. I got in good shape. I started running. I started entering races and stuff like that. And so by the time that relationship ended, all of a sudden I'm back on the dating circuit again. I'm able to get dates real easily this time, because imagine that when you're in good shape, women actually find you attractive. So I'm able to get dates. But this was really where the epiphany came. Was I kept going out on all these dates and I would get like first and second dates, like no problem. I was hooking up with these girls, like no problem. I couldn't keep women around more than like 2 or 3 dates. Like a fourth date would have been a miracle, And I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? I am like repelling women. The two biggest relationships in my adult life have failed. What am I doing wrong? And I realized, like, I'm the common denominator here. I in all these interactions with women, I'm the same guy. So what am I doing wrong? And another blessing of being in that relationship with Red Pill Chick was that she was really big into audiobooks. So she got me into like self-help books and stuff like that. And I was like, I bet you there's some audiobooks I can listen to. They'll help me figure this out. And so I just took a deep dive into the psychology of attraction, relationships. I found a couple of books. I call them my holy trinity of dating books that I just listened to on repeat. How to Be a 3% Man by Corey Wayne, Dating Essentials for Men by Dr. Robert Glover, and Atomic Attraction by Christopher Campbell. I just listened to those on repeat. And I realized everything that I had done wrong in my past relationships, everything I was doing wrong on the dating circuit. And it was just eye-opening to me. And so I ended up, during this phase, joining a free men's group on Facebook that doesn't exist anymore, called the 3% Man Group. And in that group, there was all these other guys that were studying Corey Wayne's book, How to Be a 3% Man. And we were all in there swapping notes. Like, okay, we went on a date, we tried this worked, this didn't, that sort of thing, right? And that's basically what the red pill space is. It's men swapping notes about sexual strategy with women. And so I got really active in that group. I became an admin in there. And then I created my podcast, the Come On Man podcast, to originally to interview other guys that were like me, that were studying this stuff, trying to understand, what makes women tick, how to get better with women, that sort of thing. And then the podcast grew from there. And then just doing that for a long time made me really want to work with men. So I went out and got certified as a life coach. I went and studied NLP, neuro linguistic programming, because a big problem that guys have is self-limiting beliefs and these negative paradigms, all that subconscious programming in our heads. So I wanted to learn, how do you unprogram that stuff, And so I went and got certified in NLP, and I started coaching men. And so now what I'm doing is, after having learned all this stuff, I look at all these miserable guys in the red pill space, and we get such a bad rap in this space because guys like, Andrew Tate came out of the space, and we get labeled as misogynists. We get labeled as guys that hate women and stuff. And that's really not what red pill is. Red pill is really just men's sexual strategy and a positive male identity. And so I see all these guys that find their way to the space because they got burned in divorce, because they just didn't have the skills. And I was like, well, man, if I knew what I knew back, or if I knew back then what I know now, I could have turned all this around. And so now my mission is to help other men turn those things around and be able to save their marriages. Because I actually, a thing that a lot of people think is red pill is like anti-marriage. Right. And what we say about that is, like, you've got to do what's best for you. You got to be your own mental point of origin. If marriage is something that's important to you, because a lot of people have religious beliefs, and so being married in a committed married relationship is important to them. Okay, do it. Just understand that under modern society and our laws, it's not necessarily the best deal for men. But just know that going in, and there's ways to protect yourself, you'll probably be okay. But if you also have these skills to manage a relationship effectively, you're probably going to end up being successful. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is help guys who didn't get the memo that marriage might not be the best deal for them, and how can they save what they already have.
I think years ago, I remember in my circle of friends, and we would hang out, and there would be a moment where, like, hey, what happened to that girl? I'm like, oh yeah, she's crazy, right? And then my other friend, when she come in, be like, hey, what happened to that girl? Oh yeah, man, she's just she's kind of mental, a little crazy. So one of my friends one day, we were sitting there, and he had threw that out there again, and I remember the other guy looking at him and going, look, man, you only get so many crazy cards before you have to realize you're the problem.
Exactly.
He said, he just said, look, I'm going to give you one more. But after that one, so this is your last crazy card. He says, after you can't use this card, he goes, we have to start taking a hard look at yourself. And man, it was it was funny, but it was real, right? It was a moment there where we all enjoy it. We'll bring it up when we see each other every now and then. But it's such a true moment where you have, like you said, you have to turn and look internally. Somewhere along the lines, Paul, I was going to joke with you a little bit too. Is you got Red Pill Girl, but you also introduced Nurse Girl to Lone Wolf McQuaid, and
Yes.
that was me commenting on your Twitter post, and I don't know whether you remember or not, but I was like, wait till she gets to the buried Bronco or the buried Blazer scene. I can't remember what I posted or whatever, and
yeah.
that was me going back and forth with you there on that.
That's one of my favorite scenes. It's a Dodge Ram Charger. It's like
He gets a beer.
beer. Yeah, he pours it all over himself because it's all hot, and then he puts on the supercharge. Oh, dude, that's such a manly moment right there.
Oh yeah. From the absolute, like I watched that when I was a kid, and then I went into law enforcement later, right? And everybody's like, Jeff, about your law. I mean, I tried to live the lone with McQuaid life. You know what I mean? It's just, uh, yeah, that's too funny. But all right, so back on track here. I wanted to tell you there's a couple things along the same lines of what you were saying. You created your marriage, somewhere along the lines, you guys allowed this to fade. And that's something that we're going to see. And that's probably where the folks that are listening to this now are like, wait a minute, he's starting to talk to me over here. What are some common mistakes that you see that men are, that causes the spark to fade, and how can they avoid those?
Oh man, yeah. There's a bunch of things, but I would say number one is guys tend to have this concept of a mythological finish line. Like they'll date until they get a girlfriend, and then they think everything's fine. Like I don't have to do anything anymore. And then the girlfriend starts nagging them until they get married. Okay, cool. Now that I got her married, now I don't have to do anything anymore, right? And
Yeah.
so they fall into complacency where life just becomes routine, life becomes boring. They stop flirting with their wife, they stop taking her on dates, they stop, being the attractive guy they were in the beginning when she fell in love with him. But the thing is that women do this to guys. We call this the beta-tization process, and it's a subconscious process that women do to men. They don't even realize they're doing it, and it's part of their evolutionary wiring. And it's basically a 5-step process, and it starts off with testing a man. Women will test men either consciously or subconsciously. It's like little playful jabs, or they'll let's say you come up with plans and they try to change the plans on you. They're like, oh, I don't like that restaurant, let's go to this restaurant instead. Like little things like that to see if you will set and enforce boundaries, if you will, not take her so seriously, if she can get you in your emotions, if she can throw you off center, like anything like that. Women do this to men because they have to know that the guy that they're with can handle like all the crap that life throws at you, right? That's a part of their natural, that's a survival instinct. And so women will do this, and guys not realizing what's going on will like be overly accommodating. Like let's say you make plans and she's like, no, let's go to this restaurant instead. And you go, okay, yeah, let's go to that restaurant. Let's do that. The more she's able to basically manipulate you into doing things that she wants, the more she loses respect for you and the more attraction she loses. Right. And it's a weird thing that they do. And then another thing that they do is they really are trying to get you to be more of the provider type, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but she needs a guy that can take care of the kids and be nurturing, a guy that can, put food on the table, a guy that can pay the bills and stuff like that. And so they really go hard on making you this soft guy that does all these nice things and makes her feel comfortable. But that comfort feeling doesn't make her sexually attracted to you anymore,
Right.
And so we talk about it a lot in the space, but basically women are hypergamous by nature, which part of that means is she's always looking for her best possible option. But another part of that is that women are looking for 2 types of qualities in a guy. And we say, alpha seed, beta need, right? And so alpha seed is what makes her sexually attracted to you. And that is basically all the qualities that give her, that spike her dopamine, right? So a lot of people don't like the term alpha and beta, and that's fine. But you can look at it as neurochemicals, right? Alpha traits give her those dopamine feelings, and then the beta traits, that comfort feeling, being a good nurturer, being a shoulder for her to cry on, being a good dad, like all that kind of stuff. Those are beta traits. That gives her oxytocin, that releases oxytocin for her, which is that comfort, love feeling. And the problem is a lot of guys go really hard on the provider side, and they go out and they're making the money and they're putting food on the table and they're being a good dad, and then they're wondering why their wife doesn't want to have sex anymore. It's because you're not doing any of these other things that spiked her dopamine, the stuff that usually you're doing in the beginning of the relationship when you're trying to get her in bed in the first place, when you're out in the dating circuit, you know. So one of the big things that I have to work with guys is getting them back to the beginning of the beta-tization process. The number one thing is how do you handle these tests that they're throwing at you, and what do these tests look like? And so what I find is in my program, like week 1, we talk about setting the tone and leading in your relationship. And we also do a relationship autopsy, like what attracted her in the beginning. But week 2 is handling her shit tests, right? And that's because we have to take the relationship back to the beginning. And so one of the biggest things guys find after doing all the exercises for week 2, they come back to me on week 3 going, I'm not in a dead bedroom anymore. Like she's responding to me very positively now. Like, what's going on here? And it's because, like, yeah, man, like you're passing her tests. That actually boosts her attraction. So we're bringing it back to a baseline of attraction with these guys. So yeah.
No, I'm like I've watched what you're talking about firsthand. At the gym that I own, I have guys come in that were just trying to trying to get back on circuit, right? Same where they're in that first phase where you had talked about, where like one guy, because it was the one guy came in and you go through little goals, get through your first sessions, do some things, and then it was kind of like, all right, where are you at? What are you looking to accomplish here? You know, what's your plan? He goes, well, the wife and me just separated, and I go, trying to get back on the market. Got you. Check. Right.
Yep.
You want me to get you back to your fighting weight, and let's get back in the game, right? And then it took us, Paul. It took us into a lot of what you just said, to where his idea of making his wife happy had been to really just roll over and do whatever she said. And I remember, our conversations, and I was like, it seems like you gave up who you were in the pursuit of what you would call making her happy. And it was a neat, it's really cool to hear you bring that into this kind of a similar perspective, because I kind of had told him, I was like, it's okay to be flexible, but it's not okay to just bend and remain there. And I think that's what you've done, right? So I've kind of seen that firsthand. I just wanted to kind of echo and alongside you of what I had witnessed too.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually like that you brought that up, that a lot of guys, when they go through the separation and divorce and they find themselves back on the dating circuit, now they realize, oh man, I'm 50 pounds heavier. That's exactly the experience I had.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, we're trying to do with these guys is basically get them to that point before the separation, because it's like it boggles my mind, and I've done it. I'm guilty of it, so I know. But in hindsight, it boggles my mind that I let myself get that far, because that's what we do. We basically let ourselves go in a relationship. That kills attraction. She dumps our sorry carcasses, and then we go back on the dating circuit, and we're like, oh crap, now I got to get attractive again. Well, how about before she dumps your ass, you start looking at some of these warning signs that she's not happy in the relationship. She's sort of emotionally checked out. She's doing, like, there's lots of like red flags that guys are just oblivious to. They think everything's fine. And if you just pay attention to some of these things, realize, oh crap, I got to get back on track. So I need to hit the gym now. I need to, start working on my frame a little bit, my mental frame, like how I handle her emotions. I need to learn social skills again. I got to start, being an attractive guy that, when I go out and about, my wife sees that other people like me, that she sees that I have options. Because a funny thing about guys is they get into a relationship and their wife might even say, hey, that girl was flirting with you, right? And most guys go, what? I would never talk to her, honey. No, I only have eyes for you. I love you, And it's like, no, own that stuff, because there's this thing that women, it's a psychological sort of hack that women like men that other women like. We call it pre-selection. So if you see, or if your wife is actually looking around for her competition, and she's seeing other girls making eyes at you and laughing at your dumb jokes and whatever, batting their eyes and showing you their cleavage and stuff, she's going to go, hey, that girl's flirting with you. So you need to own that and go, well, yeah, why wouldn't she? look what you got here, right? Like if you sort of, play it off it jokingly, but own it, right? Like that actually boosts your wife's attraction. So that's, you got to be that kind of guy that, when your wife is out, you and your wife are at a restaurant, that the waitress is kind of flirting with you a little bit. Because that's going to cause your wife to go, wait a second, other women like this guy. I must have something here. I must have a catch here. And that actually gives her validation, right? That sort of is using her hypergamous nature to your advantage, because she's like, oh, he is my best possible option. Look at all these other girls like him, right? So there's like that kind of stuff. You got to boost your social skills, your frame, your muscles. And then, we also want to make sure that your finances are in check, even though that is the beta side of hypergamy. A big thing that like couples fight about are finances and debt and all that kind of stuff. So if you get that in order, that is like a huge weight lifted off her chest. Like if you take the lead in that, get yourself out of debt, like get really good at making money and stuff, so that money is not an issue, she can just relax into her feminine. She doesn't even have to worry about stuff. She knows that you got it handled. But a lot of guys, they'll end up like, giving their wife, they just bring in the money and their wife handles all the bills, right? She spends all the money, they make all the money. And it's like, no, dude, you got to take ownership of that back. And then you need to set a plan to get the finances like on in order. And then she doesn't have to worry about that. And you'll find that you'll have much less fights about money and stuff when you're controlling it. So yeah, there's lots
I've
of
seen
things
a
guys
lot of
can be
people
doing.
bail too, Paul. I've seen a lot of relationships, and this is when I say a lot, more than five probably, to where there was probably some struggling finances, but when a financial struggle hit, first the wife bailed, looking for certainty, because it created this uncertainty about just her lifestyle. Maybe not so much lifestyle, but just I need to make sure I'm provided for, my kids are provided for. And I've seen wives jump ship just because of all the debt that they carried. And then once there was a financial struggle that entered in, the wife was like, I'm gone, because their house wasn't in order.
Yeah, there's that sort of thing happens too. A lot of times also it's like women also won't leave if you have a plan, but a lot of guys,
Yeah.
when they get into a bind like that, right? Like maybe they lose their job, but they've got like, 4 cars that they're paying for because they think they're Ric Flair or something. I don't know. And
Yeah.
they have like a house that they got to pay for. There's a lot of guys that instead of like hitting the ground running and just, what, I'm going to take care of it, whatever, they'll just go into depression and lay on the couch and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not even a real man, and then what the reason why the wife leaves is not necessarily because the money problems. It's because the guys give up on themselves. It's a
Yeah.
mental thing. Like it's almost like she looks at you like you're mentally weak. And so that's a big problem. Like guys need to be able to have a sense of like mental, emotional durability during times like that, during hard times. And then she'll most likely stick by your side. But yeah, there's some terrible women out there. There's, you can't get around it. Some women are just not very good.
Yeah. Man, your latest book, easy. If you're folks, if you are walking through Barnes and Noble, get her to FCK you again. It's a very catchy title, Paul. And I
It's
remember.
not available in Barnes and Noble at this time. It's only available on Amazon. But yeah, get her to F you again. Just look for Paul Bauer on Amazon in books. You'll find it.
Yeah, I remember when you had scheduled with me, and I was just learning more about you, and I'm like, Paul Bauer, okay, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting book, like it's a hook. So folks, when you're scrolling Paul, it's hard not to miss his captivating, very very thoughtful titles that he puts into his books. But it speaks to the mission that you're on, man, and but you got that out for you now. What's like a key principle, and you may have touched on it, and if you did, give us something else that why someone should go listen to that book. What's that one of those key principles in there that they're going to find, um, that you like to share with us?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? If you ask any sort of average Joe, like what's the key to a healthy relationship, they'll say, "Oh, communication. Communication's the key to a healthy relationship." And I always say, no, communication is important for conflict resolution, but the key to a healthy relationship is having that genuine desire, right?
Yeah.
However, in order to get that genuine desire, you actually do have to be pretty good at communication, and you have to be able to communicate with her from a position of authority, right? So understanding women's hypergamous nature is that women never seek their level. They always look for someone who's better, right? That's what they always look for, a guy that makes more money than them, a guy that somehow they can look up to. Women, you'll never see a high-powered boss lady attorney marrying a Starbucks barista guy. Like, you'll never see that. You know what I mean? And so women have to look at men as above them in some way. And it sounds really misogynistic to say that, and women hate when I say stuff like that, but it's true if they really dig down and admit it to themselves. And so the thing is that men fall into this trap, and I learned this from Dr. Robert Glover. They fall into this trap called deering, which stands for defend, explain, excuse, rationalize. And so when you get into an argument, your wife starts complaining to you and, bitching and moaning about whatever you're doing. One of men's knee-jerk reactions is to start defending themselves, start explaining why they're doing what they're doing, start making excuses why they did what they did, right? Start rationalizing why they're doing what they're doing. All that's doing, though, is it's putting you at a one-down position from your wife. It's making her the judge, right? And now it's like, imagine you used to be you said you were a police officer, right? Imagine being in court and now you're trying to plead your case to the judge, right? That now you're making your wife the judge, which puts her above you, which makes her look at you like you're weak. So one of the things that we say in the space is never dear. And then a more effective communication style is what we call LUCA. I learned this from a friend of mine named Paul Benjamin in the space. LUCA stands for listen, understand, clarity, action. And so that's where, like, if your wife's complaining to you, sometimes she has a point, sometimes she's just venting, right? So you've just got to listen to what she's saying and understand where she's coming from. And then if you don't understand, you ask clarifying questions. So let me get this straight. You're mad that because I haven't been taking out the trash, like, you feel like I don't do anything around the house. Is that right? It's like, you're not explaining yourself. You're not defending your actions. You're just understanding where she's coming from, right? And you'll find that women don't want the problem solved. They just want to feel heard and understood. So if you just listen to them, that often will solve a lot of your problems. And then the A stands for action, right? So let's say she's mad that you haven't been taking out the trash for a long time, and you listen to her, get all this stuff off her chest. You find out it's not even about the trash. It's about all these other things that you haven't been doing around the house. And so she basically feels like you're a bump on the log and you don't do anything. And maybe you need to take some ownership in some of the other household activities, like not necessarily take the trash out, but the I don't know, painting the fence that you've been promising you would do for the last 6 months or something, right? Like, you need to take ownership on that. So that would be your action. Be like, okay, no, I understand where you're coming from. I think what I'll do then is this weekend I'll go ahead and paint that fence. Does that work for you? And then everything's like sort of calm, and then she feels heard and understood. And Corey Wayne says when a lady feels heard and understood, that's when the legs open. So one of the key principles, like, that I really wanted to drill home in the book is never dear, always Luca. So you'll find you'll never really get in any serious arguments if you take on that model, because there's nothing to fight about. It's like when someone's trying to throw a punch at fog, right? Like, you can't land anything because the fog's not fighting back. So you're not fighting back. You're just, okay, let me just understand where you're coming from. Okay. No, I understand that. Okay, cool. And so you'll find that a lot of guys, they'll notice that the relationship dynamic starts changing when the fights start dwindling, when she realizes, hey, I can't, like, he's not fighting with me, like, he's just either, taking a leadership action, or he's just listening to me vent, and like, that just makes me feel better. It's all about how she feels at the end of the day. So that's one key takeaway from the book. I would.
That's great. That's a great one. When you come out of your divorce, a lot of people struggle with past failures, and they carry those same failures right into the next, and that's the breaking the curse, right? That's one of the things that I speak on, is like, just because you was raised in dysfunction doesn't mean it has to carry on. Similar thing for you. when you're working through self-doubt and guilt after your divorce, what's some advice we can give to someone who's kind of right there to where they're moving from relationship or getting ready to go into another, but they're still carrying all these things, which you and I both know is really just going to be detrimental into any kind of relationship that they're trying to start.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Because a lot of people, what they tend to do when they get done with a breakup, just like your friend, right, that said, "Oh, that chick's crazy. That chick's crazy." I
Yeah.
see it all the time in the comments of my short form videos. Guys are like, "Oh, well, it's just time to dump her." Then it's like, well, yeah. I mean, you could just dump every girl that you have a little bit of a problem with, but you have to take some ownership at some point and realize, like, hey, I might not I might not have the skill set here that I need. And really a lot of the relationship dysfunction is a skill issue that, none of us, like none of us have had like a serious formal training. And you'll find that people that are just naturally good at this, they have no idea why they're good at it. So what I sometimes people complain that, yeah, like, oh, you're going to give out marriage advice and relationship advice when you're a guy that's been divorced. It's like, well, yeah, because I've been in the trenches. Like, I know exactly what most of these guys are going through. Guys that have never gone through any of this, they didn't learn anything. They just think, oh, this is just how marriage is. It's just naturally effortless. It's like, well, no, there's some skills behind that. So I would say, like, guys that are, either getting, if you're getting close to a divorce, like if you think that divorce is imminent within the next year or two, like get the book, get her to F you again, and start looking at what's going on that you can change. Because the biggest thing is that you can't change your wife. Like, everyone wants to point the fingers and no one wants to point the fingers back at themselves, but you can't change your wife. You can only change yourself. So you got to look at how you're showing up in the relationship. And I guarantee, because, the way, if you look at how your parents are, if you look at how society tells men to be, I guarantee that you're not acting in a way that is attractive to her, and she's losing that attraction. And that's why you're having the relationship problems that you're having right now.
And, ladies, you could also gift the book probably if you're experiencing these things in your relationship. It may be a perfectly timed gift, or your book might make. We may be able to introduce your book into the like the pre-wedding
Yeah.
counseling sessions, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's there's a lot of noise, right? But there's like it's really neat. Um, uh, just the way the approach that you take and all the things that you do there. Your red pill perspective focuses on attraction and leadership, right? And that takes you through. It's different than traditional communication based counseling and all those things.
Yeah.
You've probably have received some criticisms toward your approach. Um, but you also have the success stories to show that your approach works as well, right? If not, I don't think you would be putting books out and podcasting and have the following that you do. Folks, make sure we'll get to it, but make sure you follow Paul on social because his messaging on there is awesome. But um, how do you address that skepticism or criticism about your approach when you're doing that? Because here's what I kind of thinking, Paul. Like, there's a guy now that's like, man, I wish I could do that, but it's right. What is kind of your approach to help nudge somebody over toward the path that you're on?
Yeah. So
How
the
do you
way,
address the criticisms, right?
well, I mean, a lot of people, their gut instinct is to go to marriage counseling, and you'll find that, like, marriage counseling just doesn't work, right? And the reason why it doesn't work is because what tends to happen is both you and your wife go into the counseling office, and you're both trying to convince the counselor to take your side, to gang up on the other person, to make the other
Yeah.
person change. And what happens is, and this happened to me when I was married. My wife and I ended up getting marriage counseling. My wife ended up saying, I don't want to go to counseling anymore, because that's exactly what happened. The marriage counselor kept going to my wife saying, why are you nagging him about this and this and this? And my wife felt ganged up on, and she was like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. Right. So that just doesn't work. And you'll see, if you Google it, there's articles out there that 80% of marriage counseling ends up in divorce anyway, you know, and actually some people they'll if they stay married, they're worse off 2 years after having gone to marriage counseling. And so my approach is completely different because your wife's not involved in the process. I'm only working with the man. And the reason why that tends to work well is because as the man, your natural role is to be the leader in the relationship. And so you have to be the one that takes ownership and sets the tone and leads the whole interaction. And what you'll find is that women are often mirrors of their men. So if you show up differently in your relationship from a position of leadership, if you are setting boundaries, if you are being cocky and funny and not taking her so seriously all the time, and you're able to tease her and play with her again, you'll find that she's going to start relaxing more into her feminine, right? So one of the big things is reestablishing that polarity. So I really want these guys to embrace their masculine role in the relationship, and that is as the leader. And then your wife naturally falls into her feminine, and she starts following your lead, right? Now, the big thing that guys need to understand too is that, like going back to what you're saying, when guys end up, getting divorced, they end up going back on the dating circuit. The thing is that, like, a small percentage of the time, like I would say about 10% of the time, when guys do this, their wife doesn't come back on board. It's like she just does not come around, because sometimes you just have a shitty wife, right? Like there's sometimes you just chose wrong. So one of the things that we tell guys in the space is that the stay plan is the same as the go plan, right? You are going to level up. You are going to increase your sexual market value again. You're going to become a more attractive guy, which, if it comes to that point where you raise your sexual market value so high, and your wife's just not getting on board, and you look at her going, why am I still with her? Like, she's a boat anchor. I'm going this way, and she wants to stay back here. You're going to realize, man, she's dead weight, and unfortunately, but the thing is that you're going to be able to make that decision from more of from a position of offense, instead of what tends to happen to guys, where they think everything's fine. They get absolutely blindsided by divorce, and now you're on the defense, right? If you can make that position, or make that decision from a position of offense, like, you can get your ducks in a row, you can go line up your attorneys, and then when you actually do pull that trigger, you've already been working on your sexual market value. When you get back out in the dating circuit, you're already going to be able to, easily get someone better, so it's a win-win situation. You will, no matter what, if you go through this process, you're going to end up in a relationship with lots of love and sex. It just might not be with your wife, right? But 9 times out of 10, your wife's going to come back on board. I've seen that happen way more than I haven't.
That's awesome, man. I think we scratched the surface, right? I'm just glad I got to very grateful that I got to connect with you and meet you. What did I miss? Anything that we need to get out for the greater good of the group? Those are kind of the things I had talked about. Like I tell a lot of my guests, I'd love to. This is conversation one of hopefully many that you and I will get to have over time in just our conversation as dudes, and helping amplify your message and mine as well. But anything that I have left out today that we feel like we need to get out, Paul?
I'll just say this, definitely go get the book, Get Her to F You Again. It's available on Audible too. I've seen guys on like Instagram say, like, if I mail this, like, my wife's going to see that. Like, I don't want her seeing me read this book, Get Her to F You. I'll tell you what, though,
it's part of the problem.
That's part of your problem. If you're afraid of your wife, you reading a book, you need the book more than anybody.
You need a book, yeah.
But I'll tell you what, if your wife actually read the book, she would agree with everything I said in that book. She would look at that and go, yep, nope, if he did all this, you know what I mean? It's not like, if you read the book, it's very tame, right? It's the title's edgy, but yeah. I'll tell you what, if you are afraid of your wife, seeing you read this book, either get it on Kindle edition or get the Audible edition, where she can't see you reading it, but it's available on Audible too. And then I will say this, if you go through the program, like go through the book, and you are having a hard time implementing it and you just don't know where to go, then book a free call with me. If you go to call.fixdeadbedrooms.com, you can book a free call with me and we can talk about your specific situation. And if I can help you, I'll show you what that looks like. And if not, I'll at least point you in the right direction.
Take advantage of that, folks. Taking old baggage, that's kind of like I pointed at my breaking curses, but taking old baggage into new relationships is just going to create more baggage. And I read something, it may have been you, Paul, but someone had posted that most women in relationships were looking for luggage and not baggage. And when I read that, I was like, oh, it's such a great perspective because we love packing our luggage and traveling and going, and we don't take baggage. So your mission is, man, it's very unique. I think it's niche. It's exactly, but it speaks into a group of folks. And me just working in fitness and around and men's mental health in general, you're speaking right into a lot of folks that I've known. So I can't wait to share this episode with them, and then just anything I can do to help support your journey along the way. Make sure you let me know, man. It's been great connecting with you, dude. I can't thank you enough for giving us the time today.
Yeah, no, this was a fun episode. I like going on other guys' podcasts and meeting other guys in the space. It's just it makes it all worthwhile, just talking to other guys.
I enjoy the conversation. I think I told you that when he got up. I enjoy meeting folks. I've gotten, I told a lady the other day, if I wasn't podcasting, I never would have met you before. And the uniqueness of our conversation and us. I'm excited to watch your journey unfold on X and Instagram, and you'll find me somewhere along the lines commenting, kind of nudging you along about Lone Wolf McQuaid. As the opportunities provide, man. But thank you, and keep pressing on, brother. Anything I can do, let me know.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.